All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And this is going to be a first impressions and feedback video on the first playtest for the relaunch that the devs have just released with the new loadout system, with the factions taken away, the visual recoil, the recoil, and the bobbing and stuff like that, the portal changes and stuff like that has been taking place. So I've already done a few takes on this, and it ended up being way too long. So with that being said, I'm trying to cut it down while getting all the information to you guys as well as feedback. So I'm just going to say right off the bat that the lack of screen shaking and as well as the visual recoil and the weapon recoil itself have made for an overall smoother experience. It was so smooth that at first I thought there was something wrong and I couldn't wrap my head around it. I couldn't understand, because I've played this game a lot more in terms of time played already than the vast majority of people who play this game. And I could tell you at first I was like, WTF, but then I realized that the game was just smoother for it, and I love it, and I don't want to go back to the previous build because it's that much more smoother. And with the way the weapon recoil works, again, it just goes up and it's a lot easier to control, and by default it's a little bit less than what it was previously. This makes headshots and consistency shots a lot more viable. It also gives a player a chance to kind of come back in a gunfight if they're going up against somebody who shot them first but aren't that consistent with their shots. I think that is a great thing. It also makes the movement that much more valuable, right? Whether the movement is in the form of a slide or whether it's in the form of a strafe or whatever it is, it makes the movement that much more viable. If you're able to literally mix and match your skill set in terms of what you have to offer on a gunfight to gunfight basis, I think you're going to come out on top more often than not this time, which is great. I think also that headshots play a different role, a much bigger role this time, or should I say a significantly bigger role, because, you know, in the middle of a gunfight, let's say you're using an assault rifle and you've got good recoil control as it is, you can go from shooting in the stomach or chest area to slowly going up manually by your, controlling it by yourself and getting closer to that headshot and getting that kill a little bit faster, especially if you realize that a person who's shooting at you is ahead of you in a gunfight. And if you decide to go up towards the head because you're in a position to where you can do so, let's say you have a little bit of height advantage on them, then by all means, that's great. I mean, body shots and consistency to body shots are still really, really good. And your majority of kills are still going to come from there from if you're using automatic weapons. But with that being said, for those people that are really conscious of that sort of thing and specifically go for headshots, it's become even more valuable now. I think precision weapons are going to become even more valuable now because of this, and it just makes them that much more valuable, especially when you're using a weapon at its optimal range. So if you're using an SMG or a shotgun and you stay within your optimal range and you're consistent with your shots, the chances of you winning that engagement went up, because consistency is key, and being able to use a weapon in the best way possible is key as well. You can still be versatile, don't get me wrong, but again, with the time to kill increase, it's not like people with a submachine gun are going to try to pick you off from a range, right? Unless they notice or something like that you're really low health and they need to put a couple bullets into you or something like that. But other than that, the different kinds of weapons that are on offer are even more balanced now because of the time to kill. So I think that's definitely a good thing. Same thing goes for melees. You're gonna I think the perk to where it does more melee damage is going to be more popular now, which is great. But at the same time, it's going to make engagements that much more interesting, because if you melee somebody too quick, and because of the time to kill change, you're probably gonna have to go back into gunfight mode or do a second melee. But a lot of people are probably just going to choose gunfight mode and try to go for that headshot and get that insta kill. So I think close quarters engagements have become even more interesting now because of it. And it's going to take a little bit of adjustment, but once you adjust, which is very easy because there's no visual recoil, and at the same time, the weapon recoil has become that much more predictable and that much more in the hands of the player, so to speak, sort of thing. I think it's definitely a big one, because when they announced that the time to kill was going to be slightly longer, like up to 20% or whatnot, my first worry was, oh man, a lot of casuals are really going to be worried about this. But no, I'm surprised that it plays even better in my hands as opposed to in theory, right? Because all we knew was everything in theory, but now that I've gotten my hands on it, I actually like it quite a bit. I think it's really good. So with that being said, let's continue on with what I wanted to say. I think the perk system, the loadout system in general, is definitely a huge step in the right direction. Again, especially when you're talking about pubs, it's definitely a step in the right direction. The fact that, and here's another reason why it's a big step in the right direction, right? When this game releases, there's going to be a progression system with challenges, right? Let's put it that way, right? So if a person is going for a very specific challenge, right? If a person is going for a very specific challenge, they can now customize their class in order to go for those specific challenges instead of being, limited. This gives, the progression system that much more potential in terms of the lack of limits of things that they can ask you to do for challenges and unlocks and stuff like that, as well as progression and XP itself. And at the same time, it gives the player that many more options in terms of mixing and matching how they want to play. If a person only likes one specific weapon in this game and that's their go-to weapon for whatever reason, regardless of their skill level, they can now have a multitude of different classes with different perks per weapon. Not just because it would change something gameplay wise and add more variety to the gameplay, but again, going on for full launch, if this stays, it's going to be that much more interesting and cool, for the progression system. I think it complements the progression system and challenges very well, and I think it's a really big step in the right direction. I really do, and it was a whole lot of fun, as well as the equipment. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? So there were a couple of blemishes as well. It wasn't all perfect, even though it was great and it was fun. It wasn't all perfect. You guys remember, for those of you guys that played Halo back in the day, whenever you would reach, let's say you playing campaign, and whenever you had progressed at a level far enough to where you would see, a checkpoint reach sort of thing, and there would be like a split second pause on screen, as the rest of the level loads up or whatever it is. And you get your checkpoint or whatnot. There was a lot of that going on, especially like towards the middle of the session. And then at the very end, the last couple games or so, there was a lot of stuttering, and, hit detection wasn't working, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of stuttering. And then even in some cases, it felt like there was a hit detection delay. So I just wanted to report that, because with the new survey, they basically asked questions about that, and I did fill it up and I did submit it. But I might do a separate video in terms of what I put on, and as well as the survey questions. And I thought the survey questions were good. I thought they were good, and there were also some options in terms of people explaining very specific things as well. So I think this is definitely a good thing, and I really, really appreciate that personally. Let's see what else. Yes. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the new portal placements or whatnot. I mean, I understand what the devs are trying to go for, but at the same time, again, the game in terms of default is still off balance. And I feel that even though you're adding more portals, whether they're in more important places or more significant places with additional lines of sight, I feel like you're still adding more unbalance to the game, simply because of the fact that, again, it's very one-sided. Portals are very one-sided. They're very offensive sided. And sure, some portals are more risky and stuff like that. If you go through them, they give you momentum. You're flying through the middle of the map and stuff like that. So there's a risk reward to it. I get it. I understand that aspect. But at the same time, again, you're still adding, chaos, offensive chaos to what was already chaotic. There's the problem with the portals, in my opinion, in Splitgate 2. And I remember when talking to Zach, he kind of made me think of this in terms of what he had to say. There's pretty much nothing but offense and not really that much defense. And I kind of have this idea. It's not a perfect idea, but I think in theory it could work really well, especially if it gets balanced and at least, if it gets maybe possibly looked into in terms of internally. But I wanted to share it here with you in this video, as well as the devs. And that is that my idea is that what if you were to walk up to a portal wall, and whether it's by shooting it or meleeing it, what if you were to temporarily shut that portal wall down, depending on whichever method you used, right? So for instance, let's say you put a few rounds into it, you shut it down for about 2 to 3 seconds. Let's say you empty an entire clip into it, you shut it down for a total of 10 seconds, which would be the max. But if you meleeed it, you would also do 10 seconds, because you're literally right there in person. So it's like you shut it down for 10 seconds. And again, I'm just using these numbers as just like as a template. It doesn't mean it has to be exactly 10 seconds or 2 seconds or whatever. I just wanted to kind of show that. I just wanted to kind of explain my concept. And obviously, if you pick up power weapons, you could shut a portal wall down for even additional time. And again, if somebody has their portal up, and if you shoot at that portal, again, it still works the same way. Your bullets can still go through. You can still get that kill. You have to shoot the portal wall around that portal in order to shut that entire wall down temporarily, at least, right? It would be the option of the player. Same thing goes with melee. Same thing goes with everything else. And it's something that's very easy to learn and understand. And there's a risk reward factor to it, right? I mean, you're emptying bullets. You're using part of your ammunition to shut a portal wall down. It could be too much, but at the same time, we could extend, your average clip, for ammo capacity for like an additional 5 to 10 bullets, which a player can use to either use against killing other people, or basically for using part of it to shut down portal walls or whatnot, like temporarily, right? So because again, there's a risk reward to that. And again, whether you're talking about offensively or defensively, I think this is something very interesting in terms of adding in balance. And then of course you've got the fact that a player has to choose, but it's something that's very easy in concept to understand, and it doesn't really it doesn't really require the devs to do anything in terms of adding anything in or worrying about an extra input or replacing something with something else. So it's literally just adding something in, right? If they've added the ability to use portals the way that they can be used in this game compared to Splitgate 1, which is, which literally amplifies the offense of what portals can do. It's like, okay, well, let's amplify the defense now, right? We can't just, like, I feel that if portals are more valuable in this game because of how you can use them offensively compared to Splitgate 1, because to a certain degree, Splitgate 1 had like some limitations and stuff like that, which is where the balance came in. Plus, they had the EMP grenades, right? But in this game, you need to have a counterbalance that would be similar to how powerful the offense is, right? If you have a powerful offense, you have to have a powerful defense, right? You can't have a powerful offense in terms of how the portals are used with, a very weak defense, because it would still be very one-sided. And again, this is where the balance comes in. But this was just an idea that I came up with. I know it's not perfect, but at least in theory, I think it would be very, very interesting, and again, very simple to learn. And I just kind of wanted to add that in because I know that in the development team, there's always ideas that are shared. So I just wanted to share that idea. And I also wanted to hear feedback, not just in terms of what the devs think, but also like in terms of what the community thinks of an idea like that, to where it's like, you can have your portal wall kind of be like almost like an enemy to where they have a health bar, right? So it's like you can completely drain that health bar that slowly comes back on its own within a short period of time, depending on how much damage you do to that portal wall, whether it's by melee, power weapon, or your regular weapon or secondary weapon, right? Or maybe even in some cases equipment, I don't know. But again, this is just something that I thought that could potentially work if balanced and if implemented properly. And I want to know in the comments section in terms of what you guys think. So overall, I think this play session has been definitely a W. The 3 hours that this thing lasted for went by really, really quick. And I really appreciate the differences, and I really, really think there's a lot of potential to be had here. If you balance the portal play or whatnot and stuff like that, add some defense to it or whatnot, and the ways that you can do it, as well as everything else that has already been implemented, this game is going to be more addictive than it already is. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. And with that being said, I want to know, for those of you guys that were watching and or playing this session, what do you guys think? What have your experiences been? And even if you just watched it because you're on console, you're not able to participate, unfortunately, like, what are your opinions in terms of what you've seen, whether it's a streamer that you saw or whatever the deal is? What do you guys think overall? I really like to know down in the comment section below. And as always, I like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Good job, devs, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.